just how many arrangements of the songs there are. There's a lot of stuff that these people do. So now we'll get right into the actual music of it. And there's, again, a lot, and a lot of good stuff. So Ashley, let's go bring up our example crossfade here of all these Desire Driver remixes.
So this first one is the original for the game, Desire Driver.
Oxtail Brass, they're really good instrumental.
Also solid.
All right, boys, are you ready? If you know the song, get ready to sing along.
Doki doki baku baku. That's not how it goes.
Right. Yeah, so that's a really good example, right, of kind of the range of different interpretations. Again, that's all based on the one original Desire Drive song. Those are all based off the same song, all reinterpretations of it. And especially that last one really gets into, you know, like that fan creative element of it, where, yeah. Anyway, let's, so why Touhou music, right? Like, what sets it apart from other Dojinworks or other video games and whatnot? Why doesn't Fortnite music have this kind of community, right? And that has to do with the original OST has a very like recognizable melodic like part to it. Like it's very easy to mess with it and reinterpret it and do all this stuff with it. I'm not very musically talented. That's all I see here. So I'm just struggling here. But basically it's catchy, it's memorable, and you can do a lot with it. You can reinterpret it, put it in all different tones. But then also just like, aside from the composition, you also have this massive body of source material from, you know, like all of the music CDs, all of the different character themes for the games, the stage themes for the games, all the titles and credits themes. And so you have all these this massive body of stuff to work with. You can do interesting things like, oh, let's go make a house album based off of, you know, 10 Desires, and then it's absolutely fire. But then also you kind of have, especially in the early parts of the community, you have the memes, right? The internet, you know, the internet jokes and stuff. Those were very foundational to kind of the music scene, especially with the Dempa stuff.
There's also one other element to this. For a lot of other music, like Fortnite music, for example, it's heavily copyrighted. So in terms of making arrangements, it's pretty difficult. Whereas with Touhou, it's very much a different story. ZUN's much more encouraging of fanworks of all kinds. So in a lot of the early scene, next slide. Yeah. So in a lot of this early timeline, it was one of the first platforms where people could do whatever they wanted. So it caught on very quickly for that reason.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of go really quickly into the timeline of Touhou releases and how that affected the music community and the community as a whole. We start out with the PC98 games. Didn't really catch on until after them. They were kind of retroactively popular, but weren't that popular at the time. Things really start picking off in EOSD, which is August 2002, yeah. So around there, that's when like people start like seeing it, and because it's on Windows now, it's not on the weird PC98 operating system, so people can really start getting into it. And we're come to the release of PCB Touhou 7. That's when you get the first, I don't know if I'd call it official, the first Dojin album released at a Comic-Con, and that's that Stardust Reverie. I don't know how to pronounce words, but point is, that kind of got the starting of like this instrumental era where a lot of people just want to do instrumental reimaginations, rearrangements of those songs. And then that kind of went well into 2005, which is when Beat Mario came out with the first vocal album. I actually used to think that was the first album overall. It is not, it's the first vocal album. There's actually a lot of interesting names that released stuff around the same time. But that album is so, like, what is the word?
Foundational?
Foundational, yes, foundational to the entirety of the Touhou music scene. That helped me earn it. It goes off. But anyway, then you start getting more, you get past kind of the early Windows eras, past POFE, and then you start getting into kind of like the golden age. This is basically right around Mountain of Faith and Subterranean Animism, is where the music scene exploded. That's where IOCs, all of the classics start coming out. That's where all of the cool stuff really starts happening. The community really starts exploding, and at the same time, internet culture starts spreading. And the thing about Touhou is it was basically the early internet culture, both in Japan and later in America when we started like stealing a lot of their stuff with like 4chan from their 2chan and stuff like that. So it was really foundational to early internet and otaku culture, especially since all of these, all the funny music videos started coming out around this time. And then a little bit after, the Dempa craze, when like people really like the funny stuff and the funny animations, that's when it started getting serious and people realized, wait, there's actually cool stuff we can do. There's these cool characters here with all these cool designs. There's this cool music stuff. We can do really interesting stuff. So that's when we start getting stuff like Bad Apple. That's when Buddha, Tomei, and Feld start coming out. You get Cafe de Touhou. You really, and Foreground Eclipse. You really start getting serious interpretations of these songs that really try to like, hit emotional peaks and stuff like that, not just make you laugh. And that kind of brings us to around 2013, 2014. The series kind of stops being the representation of internet culture. A lot more things that the internet otaku scene gets way more diverse and starts really diversifying. You got things like Idolmaster coming out, you got like gacha games start getting popular. And so the breadth of like what is internet culture really expands. And due to that, like I might have the timeline's a little bit like emptier here. That doesn't mean there's a lot of releases, but there isn't really a fundamental change in the state of things. Again, people still kind of just a lot of electronic music, some metals and stuff like that. It isn't really till like 2015 and 2016 where we start really seeing a resurgence. You start seeing Touhou fan games pop up, even on consoles. You start seeing also like World Trip, like some really good albums start coming out. And basically, the moment Touhou games start coming to scene, you get this massive renaissance of interest in it. You get all these people coming out to go and make new albums, go and reinterpret old albums, go and make reanimations of old videos. You just get this massive resurgence of everything. And then after that, you start getting fan games on Steam, Touhou fan games on Steam. And that's bringing a bunch of people in. I've interviewed a lot of people for this, and there's so many people who said Luna Nights was my introduction to Touhou. Yeah, that is, it is incredible how much like passion that brought into the scene.
And even from a music perspective, a lot of these fan games are also have good soundtracks.
Yeah.
And there are solid mixes in their own right as well.
Yeah, and then especially more recently, like getting into 2020, that's when Akatsuki kind of became king. Like before that, it was like, especially in that like 2015 period, the pre-Steam period, you kind of had no one was like the one. But then in 2020, Akatsuki really took the throne with like Necromantic and all that, Nani Paganda, and those really cemented them as like the like iconic Touhou group in the modern age. Speaking of modern age, so what's currently happening in Touhou? So since 2020, we got 2 new mainline games, 2 new side games, and 1 music CD. We've had officially licensed stuff in terms of Touhou Spell Bubble and Touhou Daimaku Kakura, and we've had some absolute bangers of games. Mistia's Izakaya and Artificial Dream and Arcadia, so good, so good. Highly recommend those games. And also, you kind of have this resurgence of YouTubers coming out. I really like this someone 45356. It doesn't make it easy to search up his name. Highly recommend him. He does all of these Hispanic, like Latin American arrangements of all these different themes, and then it includes really funny, like Latin American themed art. It's really, really cool, really creative. There's this one guy named Assy14 who does some PC98 arrangements, but I've never heard of him. And you've got a few other people. So Assy, where will we find this music?
That is a great question. So depending on how you want to listen to your music, there is a variety of sources. So if you want to go for digital downloads, Boot.pm is probably the place for Japanese circles. Bandcamp, if you know them, they're good for individual Western circles or Western groups. If you want like physical CDs, these days it's a lot easier. So with like Otaku Republic and Melonworks, they used to be really hard with international addresses, but nowadays they fixed that. And lastly, if you want to do like digital streaming, YouTube Music and Spotify is your best bet. Now, if you're like me and love rhythm games, there is a plethora of stuff for you. You have Touhou Spell Bubble, obviously, and if you go to like Round 1, you have DDR, Zambotex, Groovebozer, and a whole bunch of other stuff, which is great for that.
And then one other thing to note is, especially recently, I forget the year it was, but there was this Touhou Dojin music label that popped up.
Yes,
and basically, well, we're gonna have that little check mark you see there, and that's going to mean that they are part of the official Touhou music Dojin label. And basically that means it will all be like on all of these platforms. It is basically a distribution thing. That is one of the reasons why we started seeing in like, what was it, like 2018? A bunch of like copyright strikes for all these different
Yes,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, something around there. We saw all these copyright strikes. That's because this music label came up and started like actually digitally and physically distributing all of this music a lot more, making it a lot more accessible, but also resulting in a lot of copyright claims on, you know, some of the independently uploaded stuff. So now we kind of got our groundwork for what Touhou music is, the scene and stuff. So now we're going to go into some of the big people in it. Starting off with mostly the vocalists, especially from the Dempa era. So this is all your IOC stuff. And you can see there's a lot. And this is just from like, you know, the first couple of years when it started getting popular. There's a lot of people really into this. Miko is probably the biggest one. She actually got a job as a government ambassador to her local region because of her work in Touhou. That is the official reasons is she got that job so she could be the ambassador for her location because she did Cerno's perfect math class. But in addition to that, you have 3L, and she's big because she's in like all of this electronic stuff. She transitioned from the cutesy, you know, Miracle Pinnacle stuff, the Diusi stuff, into doing some really, really good, serious music. In addition, we have kind of on the one side of the screen, we have all the people who are still kind of active. On the other side are people who are just kind of there for, you know, this era and then kind of petered out. Of them, there's also kind of, I would say Coco is also kind of worth noting because she is the stereotypical super cutesy, like sugary voice, the super like, you know, lolly voice, yeah, moe voice, yeah. But after you move past Dempa, again, you start getting this much bigger diversification of sounds and intentions. And so you've got all these people in the EDM space, and the EDM space is interesting because they all are working together. So like almost all 6 of those people are all on all of the albums listed. Like it actually took me a while to find like, oh wait, I already have this album listed. I need to go and like, you know, mix it up here. But there are albums where all 6 of these people are on different songs in the album. They frequently work together with all of these different groups, right? And similar with that, when you start going in outside of the EDM space, when you get to start sort of the pop rock people, they kind of work with everyone, including the EDM people, including like the Eurobeat people. They just go with everyone. They are really active, like especially like Aya Panzu and Ayo, the Shinra Bancho people. They do a lot of stuff outside their circle. Ronco does everything. Every genre you can imagine. You know, metal, you know, post-rock, you know, rock.
European as well, Ethan?
Yeah, everything. And there's also Isna, which I didn't actually know much before I started the panel, but she's also like appears in so many things you don't really expect.
She actually appears a lot as a arranger as well, not just as a
Yes,
vocalist.
yes, and then I always get really excited when I see that vocalists also do arrangement work and like instrumental work. I think it's really cool. And then it's also worth noting, we'll go talk about the international scene a bit. The international scene is really interesting because pretty much outside of Japan, everyone kind of works together. Like, you know, the people, Milky Chance from Germany, she works with all these American arrangers and with French arrangers and with all these people from across the world. And it's really interesting how interconnected the English-speaking community is and how active it is. They even had a bunch of albums out last year, and I know they're still working on stuff now. So.
There's one I want to make. So for each one of everybody's albums, I'll point out they actually aren't from the each album is actually from another circle that the person in question has collaborated in. Just to underline that point.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of collaborations there. So now we're gonna kind of go into. You're gonna see a lot of recurring names, and a lot of times they're referring to different people. This is gonna really help you when you're like looking for your rhythm game song. And you're like, well, this one's by Aki, but it sounds a lot different from like the one I heard from this other thing that said it was by Aki. That's because those are two completely different people, and it depends on whether or not they capitalize the A. Similarly, you have Nachi and Nachi, very, very different people. Nachi with a capital N is from Inorai and she does metal, whereas Nachi from Zytokind does EDM and has a very cutesy, high-pitched, whispery voice. Very iconic, and I actually like her quite a bit, but just like, they're like polar opposites in terms of sound. That's really funny. But then you get to problems when you have Vivian and Vivian because they work with completely different people and also go for completely different sounds, but the same name. And then you're like, oh, the Madaras with Vivian, that sounds gonna be interesting. And it's like, oh, this is someone else. It's also worth noting there's some people with similar names like Stack and Stack Rose. They are different people. Though it's interesting because Stack herself does arrangements and like plays instruments for the band. And Stack Rose does too, but Stack is the vocalist who does all the whoa stuff, whereas Stack Rose just like mixes the woes. And then you also have Eureka and Eureka. Don't worry, it's not too important to get it all right, but just know if you see like really weird spellings on like song listings, just know that it's complicated. It's complicated. So getting more into producers.
So in terms of that, So you have your producers here. So you have your DJ Command and Elementas. So in terms of the European and the electronic scene, you'll actually see people go back and forth. It's just across the street. For example, Linjin and Nato will work together all the time and whatnot. Over in the dev side, school create side, Beat Mario probably stands above them all as like the foundational arranger and whatnot. And then you have Kastora and over in the dev side and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have a lot more than that, but those are like the big guys who go out and you'll see their names a lot and not associated with all the same circles. A lot of times you'll have, if you go and play like Groove Coaster and stuff, sometimes it'll be associated with the producer and the vocalist instead of the circle, so sometimes it gets confusing. Oh, is this an IOCs? Is this what is it, a Madaras, whatever. So now we're gonna go on to animators, and I did forget a big one here, and that is Kinema Khan. And before I had a huge slide explaining and breaking down Kinema Khan's discography, but we don't have time for that here. So, point is, it's really interesting how the old Dempa era animations had all this super simple but highly animated art. Like you can kind of see like, oh, there's Alice running, there's all these different poses of Shiki Eki, you have all this interesting background work with Cerno and the Cerno's Perfect Math Class, and you have her dancing. But then you go to the modern stuff, and you have really complicated art, but very simple animations and a lot of 3D animations that you can kind of see there. Like with that middle one for Opti, you can see those are just two static sprites, and it just has all this post-processing effects. And that's kind of what they do more, is they have these really like talented artists. Again, this is all independently made, so it's not like they can animate everything. And so you get like these really well-drawn sprites, and then you kind of like bring it all together in editing. And I thought that was interesting doing research for this, of how kind of it shifted from very simple but highly animated to very static but highly detailed. And then before we go and get to like some of the more music, I do want to go talk to a few different YouTubers I've talked to. So Nakarin's really cool, from Switzerland. He does a lot of EDM stuff. I was talking to him a lot about like the Swiss scene out there. It was very fascinating talking to him. He was a really cool guy. Again, when I said like all the international people kind of work with each other, he works with, I forget the name of the lyricist right now, but he works with a girl from California for a lot of the vocals and stuff. And again, like despite them not being in the same country, like you have that kind of stuff. Oh, I remember, it's Corinne T. Corinne T is the one. You have, again, that international circle, all these people working together. I talked before about someone, his stuff is so cool. Prism River I also talked to. He was very upset with the state of the Touhou scene in, I think that was Serbia. I'm really bad with geography. But he was really upset with the state of the Touhou scene there. But he really loved it. And I remember I was talking with him, he's trying to come to the US to go in, like get into a music college here, really study, and his stuff's really good. I'd highly recommend checking it out. And then the only other thing here is there is AC14, though not that I've ever heard of him. So now kind of moving on, we're gonna get to the Dempa circles. And Dempa again refers to kind of like super, super catchy stuff, right? Stuff, usually people think of it as cutesy stuff, but it's closer in meaning to like brainworm, right? It gets in your head. And so we're gonna go through Dempa and get ready for peak Touhou. It's so good. IOCs is so much fun. But going on to Cool and Create. So again, as I talked before, they're very foundational. Very foundational. We kind of laid the groundwork for Dempa. Unlike a lot of what Dempa ended up doing more with the cutesy female vocalist, this is started out with just Beat Mario singing. And he really, really got into it to the point where if you go to Japan, go to like a bar, if Help Me Aaron comes on, the whole bar will erupt screaming, Aaron, Aaron, Toss Kitchen, Aaron. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'm not as big of a fan of kind of like his other things, but I will highly respect him for his kind of contributions to the scene. He is probably either #1 or #2 Touhou fan. That title also goes to Stack. They're kind of like fighting each other for it. But he's really into it, and when I went and researched him, it's actually kind of nice. He has like a huge blog of all of like his life achievements, and his best life achievement was there was a cover of one of his songs that his mom did, and it made national news, and that was considered his like biggest achievement in life, is having his mom go and do that. It's really nice, really heartwarming, really cool guy to be with. However, what's less heartwarming is the fact that his discography is he just takes the same 3 songs from that first album and then just like makes remix albums of them, where you have like an entire thing that's just Help Me Aaron remixes. You have an entire thing that's like whatever remixes, and yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, IOCs. Peak. This is the really big Dempa one. This is one you all heard. It's in like every rhythm game ever. You've got all the parody videos that come from these. Again, most of the IOC stuff is super well animated and stuff. It has music videos with all these full animations. You've got all these memes from like the catchy brainworm stuff of Baka Baka, and then you have all that. You have Scarlet Police, and that took off very recently. But yeah, and again, it's in like every rhythm game ever, because they have the music videos. They usually incorporate that in the games. So. In terms of what we're going to do for some of the bigger circles is give you some recommendations of stuff to look at if you're interested. And for IOCs, if you're going to listen to them album by album, I'd say the Punkit ones. Those are really good, really solid. They're usually like, they're punk remixes of all their famous songs, so because of that they have like good hits. But normally IOC's albums have a major problem with having a lot of like weird songs on them that aren't like good for listening. But anyway, then you've got
Quirky.
yeah.
Right. So and then there's the other circle, Shinra Bancho. I guess this triangle's off to the side as well. So this circle kind of took up the role of like of being the predominant circle that makes all of the cute promotional videos with all of the cute funny voices. Now the difference here between Shinra Bancho and the likes of IOSIS is that in terms of the instrumentation, they take much more of a kind of a serious and dedicated role per se. Take for example the selected song here, Unconscious Requiem. So the song itself is cutesy and whatnot, but the instrumentation is closer to hard rock. In terms of lyrics, it's you basically get murdered in a back alley by Koichi in like a horror type flick. So definitely far left field than the cutesy voice that you hear it with. Now in terms of the cast members themselves, much like what we've seen before, they do lots of collaborations. However, I will feature one particular person, Lilian, because she in particular is probably responsible for Shinra Bancho's perhaps very eclectic and chaotic history. So let's go back in time to the year 2008 when Shinra Bancho started off as just one now as their name. But so the next 4 years they changed to Let's Triangle as another name. So by this point, Shinra Bancho was non-existent. By 2012, they decided, hey, let's make this side circle called Shinra Bancho, our old label, so we can do some experimental side stuff off to the side. So now for the next 5 years, you have this triangle and Shinra Bancho, same people, two circles, totally not confusing. Except by 2017, Lilian decides to get sick. She says, oh, it's over, good night chat. So she leaves and the operation moves over to Shinra Bancho. So here, it's within the next 5 years that the circle gets really, really big. We're talking like tens of millions of views on YouTube, hundreds of thousands of subscribers. It like reaches like the top 10 YouTube highlights, whatever. So that happens.
Worth noting, they kind of like took that torch from the Dempa era and kind of rekindled it with all of the kind of like, there's some of it cutesy, some of it serious, but they really bring back that Dempa energy. That was missing for a bit.
So I was there for like about 5 years, but then in 2022, Lilian says, it's over, we're back, good morning chat. So she comes back and Let's Triangle makes a revival all of a sudden. So now we're back to the point where you have Shinra Bancho, Let's Triangle, back side by side again. Oh, what a tumultuous tale. All right, recommendations.
Yeah, and then in terms of Dempa stuff, a lot of it was, like the big one's Innocent Key, they're around, but a lot of that is, let's say, not safe for work. They usually go with a lot more suggestive material. But the one I really want to cover here is R-Node, because they did the Grand Prix stuff, and that was really big back in the day. I don't hear many people talking about it now, but that was really foundational. It helped lay the groundwork for a lot of the fan interpretations of a lot of characters. So now we're getting into some of the meat of this, the electronic circles. And I'm a really big fan. It's really interesting how, Touhou has such a close connection with electronic, despite being about historical mythos and stuff. But it has to do with how kind of the independent artistic thing works. It's a lot easier to make something on your own when you're just kind of working with a computer than actually playing instruments.
So use a crossfade for electronic music.
But yeah, again, like, it's really interesting how like all the electronic circles, like there's so much different stuff. And an example being Alstromeria, look at how many albums they have and how long they've been doing this. Like, look, I wonder what that 85 or the 84 means. I wonder what they meant by that. You know, that these seem to count up as the years go by. I wonder why they have 84 on that album. But the biggest thing for Alstromeria is they did Bad Apple, that one really big song that really caught on. Memes of it to this day, YouTube reanimations of it to this day. It's interesting because that is not an official music video. It was just done by some fans. Some random guy said, oh, this would be a cool storyboard, and then just waited 2 years for someone to go and develop it, and someone actually did, and it's well known to this day. And Alstromeria is important because they are in literally every rhythm game with Touhou will have Alstromeria, usually in Bad Apple, but a lot of times with more stuff. And as for what to actually listen to with Alstromeria, if you're gonna go like for classics, Love Light, that's the one where Bad Apple is. So if you can get your hands on that, that's like a really historically important one, but because of that, it's kind of hard to get. Personal favorite that I always keep in my car is Solid Luna, because I really like the album art, and also it still has some of my favorite songs. And then Noctenzipped is a Nachi pure album, like just Nachi as a vocalist. It's like a re-release of all of her songs compiled into one album, and I just really like Nachi too. So, in terms of like the songs here to listen to, my favorite is probably Plain Asia. I really recommend giving that one a go. It's so good. And kind of similarly, we're getting into Zytokine, also, you know, electronic, kind of similar thing. Pretty big discography, not quite as big. Also pretty old, but not quite as old. And they have a main roster of about 4 vocalists: Nachi, Nana Takahashi, also sometimes called Cold Kiss, but that's a really long thing to get into. You got Itori and Aki. And back in the day, they used to do some stuff with Miku, but that's not anymore. And the big thing with Zytokine is it's all Linjin, right? He's this really big guy, and he is so prolific and has such a unique style to his thing that on Touhou TV, he's actually credited with his own genre called Linjin Pop, and that is what all of his songs go under, which is kind of funny. And the big thing is, if you see it with a C, that means it's their old music. If you see it with a Z, that means it's their new music. They've always had good album art, I love it. As for recommendations for Zytokine, the first one I think of is Death. I just think it's a solid album. It doesn't necessarily have anything stand out, but it just flows really well, really good driving music. Also really into Pleiades. That's where Electra was. That was in the Crossfade. And that's probably my favorite song by them. But I'd also recommend, if you ever find it, Roundabout. Really good, and it is very iconic, evocative of their style. It is representative of the style of Zytokine, Roundabout. It has all of their vocalists in it, all singing together. It has all of the trademarks of how Linjin kind of composes and arranges Touhou music. So now we're going to go really quick into some of the instrumental circles. Mohican Sandbag is kind of more of a messy, like dubsteppy 1v1. It basically sounds exactly like the name sounds like. Like Mohican Sandbag, Vibration of Gloom, is a good way of explaining what that album sounds like. Like you just listen to it, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Then you have Rolling Contact. They're a lot more cheery. They're happy. They still have that hardcore kind of glitchy thing, but it's much more like it's happier, upbeat, you know. Then you get my personal favorite, Kuroneko Lounge. Love him. He does all of the house set of X. Again, more popular back in the old days. But now he still has quite a few things out. He's in a couple rhythm games. I have a few Stepania maps with him. And then finally you have Jericho's Law, which is, I don't listen to him as much, but what I have listened to him is pretty good. I
started recently getting more into Jericho's Law, especially Broken Moon Beats.
Yeah.
Remix, that is so funky, so hard.
Yeah. So, again, all of these are also in historical order, all these circles too. So now we're kind of getting into much more vocal people with East New Sound and Madaras. They're very, very comparable and sometimes hard to distinguish between the two. But basically, because they share the same vocalist, they have very similar styles, right? But basically, East New Sounds by Kokucho and Tracy does Madaras, and they kind of go and have like their own like in-house vocalists, but they also collab with all of those EDM vocalists from before, which is why I talked about them first, because they appear on everything. So now we're getting into Massey's favorite.
Of this bunch, yes, US Satellite. So US Satellite, they're best known for two things. One for being the main provider of the openings for what's called Fantasy Kaleidoscope, Members of Phantasm. It's a total fan created anime series, which is really popular on YouTube, and it's probably a big source of the Touhou anime joke that has been around for a while. The other thing is that you see that number here, 238. Yeah, that's there for a reason. That's how many albums at minimum this circle has, and this circle probably is the record for that. Now, in terms of vocalists, you will see Senya. Senya was around for a long time. She did a bunch of the openings here. Sadly, she retired, and now Marcy is sort of in her place. So now we're going to go to a really bizarre area in the electronic scene, maybe the German scene.
So,
oh God.
I also tried to go give you guys like a kind of glimpse of the international scene. And Germany's really interesting because they have this really complicated thing. You see like 500 different circles, and you're like, wait, these are all from Germany. This must be really big. But it's the same like 3 people rebranding, and they're all on really good terms. Like there's no like splits or anything. It's just they all make their own circles, and then they can combine and make their own. So you start with Babe, he gets like everyone together, Milky Chan and Sasi, 2 of the vocalists, and then they split off and make their own, but still work with him. But then he basically rebrands to Frozen Starfall. But it's also worth noting that Milky Chan, her last stream, only exists for a year, and then becomes Noro Wareta Night. Yeah, that one. And that's what she's doing now. I forget exactly when her last release is, but I know I've been talking with her. I talked with her before all of these panels and just kind of get a glimpse. And from what it sounds like, she's still working on stuff. So that's pretty cool. I know just last year she had a release with Frozen Starfall when we worked with Babe for that. Again, electronic's big, lots of albums, lots of circles, probably the most popular because again, it's pretty easy to get your feet wet in and really make some cool stuff. And of these, I'd say Zerofit, Studio Zero Comforture, is probably the most historically significant. They were around a lot, but I also kind of want to give a shout out to Yonder Voice because it's really funny. They like try to hide the fact that they're Chinese to the international audience, but in like China, they're really big into it. But all of it, it's a Chinese vocalist, but it's all in Japanese, and it's collaborative with a lot of Japanese artists. So I always thought that was really interesting.
They also have 2 websites, one for Chinese and one for the Japanese listeners as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I do also want to give a quick shout out to Mofu Gakuen and Neo Sanctum. They're both very new, like again, just started 2022. And I really like what they've worked on so far. They're pretty good. And it's always awesome seeing like new people come into the scene and really try new things.
All right, so that was electronic. Now let's move on to Eurobeat. So if you don't know what Eurobeat is, it's a split off of electronic music, so big emphasis on heavy samples and synths. Basically, it's like you're driving down a massive curve, like a Foray or whatever, going like 80 miles an hour, trying to make the ATF, do a massive drift. That's the exact kind of vibe this is going for. Speaking of, let's take a quick sample, shall we?
It's just soul.
Yeah, exactly. This one sounds hard. Lastly, Alright, so the first circle on the list is none other than Soundholic, probably the biggest circle in the Eurobeat scene. So for them, the thing is that they have a lot of guests that come and go, but a lot of those guests actually stay and sort of create their own like sort of mini-series where they and a bunch of other Soundholic people kind of do their own shtick and collaborate for go about. For example, Takanashi here, who is probably the face of Soundholic, works a lot with DJ Command from Eurobeat Union and actually do a thing where Soundholic and Eurobeat Union will work together for a good long while. Let's see, so in terms of places where you'll see Soundholic appear a lot, you'll see them a lot in their surprisingly great quality peak releases on YouTube, and you also see them a lot in rhythm games. So, if you're like me and you're a big fan of the esteemed rhythm game Sound Voltex, you will find that Soundholic has a predominant presence there. So that was Soundholic. The other big circle is A1. So with A1, you have sort of a different spiel going, where you have a core group of people that's pretty small, but they themselves will collaborate a lot with other members. For example, we have Elementos all the way to the right. He actually works a lot with Soundholic. Now I'll highlight one other person here on the list. We have Odyssey or T7. So she's notable for being an English vocalist who supplies English songs to a Japanese circle releasing stuff in Japan. You don't see that all the time. I think that's pretty cool.
They just came out with an album weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. She's very much still active. Yeah, that's right.
She's on that album.
Yeah, that's right. Now, if you see a bunch of albums that say Everlasting, ZUN Tracks, Touhou Yurbi in big, bold letters with a cosplayer, that's probably a A1 album. You see these a lot at like rhythm games as well as certain anime con booths for some reason, which is pretty cool. Lastly, we'll highlight basically a small group, Neck Happy Records. So they're actually a one-man Australian band, a person making Yurbi arrangements. I highlight them because they actually started off as a simple YouTube channel making simple remixes where they just did instrumentals, but they wanted to diversify, so they added variations in the melody. They made their instrumentals more complicated, and now it's to the point where they actually have like big name collaborations. For example, Odyssey made one, makes an appearance in his album, which is pretty cool. I have their Bandcamp for highlighting. Now to end with a few other notable circles, I would highlight Yurbi Union as sort of the other big circle that's really out there.
Yeah.
So that's Yurbi. Now let's move on to the instrumental/orchestral section. So we have here a demo with 2 circles of interest. If I can pull up the thing, here it is. Alright, so first we have Tokyo Active Meets and Ohayocon Music. They're both really good orchestral circles. With the one on the left is actually an ensemble with a group of people, and it's actually 2 subdivisions. So Kokyo with a K, that's orchestral, and Tokyo with a T with the actual name, that's the actually jazz division, which is pretty cool. Next we have Ohayocon Music. It's actually a one-man group, but still makes a bunch of orchestral stuff. The difference is that he has a few collaborative vocalists. You will see here Murami Pop. Pay attention to that name, she appears a lot more than once.
I forgot to mention this, but in the Denpa era, she was also there from the beginning. So she kind of really stays with the with the scene this whole time and has really like kept reimagining herself.
Yeah, she's been around the block more than once. All right, next we have DDBY and Foxtail Grass Studio. So with DDBY, it's best described as like music you hear at a coffee shop, so very relaxed, right? The thing is though, you'll see in the bottom there, how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Captain Touhou, 1 to 8 albums. What had happened was that Shironoko hates his music being on YouTube, despite there being no other option to listen to his stuff. So he keeps putting up these like takedown notices. So without this title video here, no one will be able to listen to his stuff, which is unfortunate. Next we have Foxtail Grass Studio, if you want to say 2 words.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of Foxtail Grass. They're a lot more. They're not necessarily orchestral like everyone else, but they're more of like very chilled, relaxed, like anime BGM, but very high quality, very like full sound. It's awesome. They have like the little sound effects, and it's very cozy, very cozy.
All right, next we have TA Music and Marcy. So TA Music, they do a bunch of like piano, puzzle, orchestral rock to the mix. If you went to a certain convention called Touhou Fest, if it's a con that specializes in Touhou, they have a very special guest there, and they're actually coming back this year, which is really cool. And next we have Marcy, who's probably the Touhou pianist out there. There have been actually a lot of people, a friend of ours,
Yeah. I've had a friend who actually like got into playing the piano just from watching these, and like ended up learning it from just watching this guy play, which is really cool. And I know it's been he's been an inspiration to a lot of different people of like his very expressive playing of all these different themes.
And then to conclude, we'll have a few international orchestral circles, which, as it turns out, is actually a pretty surprising because we find a lot of collaboration in the international scene, of which I will highlight Licorice-san. I agree, simply put.
Yeah.
All right, next is the funk section.
All right, we're gonna have to go through this a bit quickly, but there's a lot to say in a lot of very little time. So go ahead and start off the the crossfade. There. That's basically really good. wants to rap. Banger alert.
I'll always be the time machine. Think it has only end. We can move the world straight till we go away.
She's back on jazz. But yeah, it's very interesting how just how diverse kind of that funk genre is. It covers so many different things, electronic things, festival things, instrumental things. There's all these different interpretations. So again, going through Shibayan Records really quick, not that he goes through anything very quick. He takes his time. He takes his time a lot. Again, I just went through a bunch of different albums. I took some screenshots. You get 4 digits, and you're gonna like it, and I do like it. But basically, he has this very progressive sound that really just builds up upon itself, and really has really good peaks. Personal favorite albums: Retro Future Girls, though Kokoro Vibration and Magico Catastrophe are also really good. He does technically new jazz, and he does a lot more jazz, and it makes me very sad because I really like his new disco stuff. That's the genre of the electronic stuff, what it's called. And we don't, unfortunately, our co-panelist Quinster wasn't here today, but we had an argument about this. So, Descending from the Guy, She Appears as a Goddess is technically on a Sirufit album first, but it's arranged and produced by Shibayan. And Quinster went and said, actually, it's a Sirufit song, but no, it's by Shibayan, it's on a Shibayan album later, and if you were to go and claim that, it's, if you made a song but it's on someone else's album first, and then you made an album with it on it, it's not your song, then the entire first album of Takamachi Walk is not a Takamachi Walk album, and then he would start arguing with me over, fight me in the back after class, But he's not here because he hates us, so he had to go home early. Anyway, moving on to Hatsune Tsumiko's. They are something I kind of always slept on, but especially going back to it for this panel, I really like them, really love them. They have all these different vocalists and stuff, all these different arrangers. They worked a lot with Kinema-kan for all the animated stuff kind of earlier. And then now, again, I don't remember, their last release was last year. I have a feeling they're not going to release anything more. They don't seem that active, but they do every now and then trickle out an album. But one of the very interesting things is these 4 songs, if you take a listen to them, they kind of show the 4 different distinct styles of Hatsune Tsumiko's. You have the Chen-yu jazz, which is iconic in its own right. It's a Chen-yu song is a very Chen-yu song. Where then you have a Vivian with Cornelius, and that's very much like Felt, which we'll get into in a bit. Then you have a Micah song, who is normally considered a Felt vocalist, but this is with Tim Vegas, which is more of Hatsune Tsumiko's producer. It's very interesting how he uses Micah differently from what Felt will when we get into that later. And then one of the last things I want to bring up, and this is a genre of music that I really miss. I don't know what I'd call it, but Dressed Up Shadow by Yoka it kind of hits this tone that a lot of stuff doesn't hit anymore. Silent Story also does the same thing, and there is from that animation there, Rainy Stars. That kind of genre of whatever you'd call it. It's really good. It's very cozy listening, and I kind of wish more people did that kind of stuff now. And then one thing before I forget is with all these people is the biggest, most iconic part of Hatsune Tsumiko's is how they use a chorus. They have Art Brown, which is a male vocalist, and usually male vocalists aren't that popular in the scene. But what he does is he does more of a backing to everyone, and it adds this really fullness to the vocals that's really cool, and also very unique to Hatsune Tsumiko's, which comes out a bit in our next one. Felt. And I'm a little bit rusty, but I'm gonna try to go through their entire discography really quick. All right, so they have, 32 albums. I'm into about 5 different eras. The first era is their first through third and their fifth, but not their fourth album. And that's important because 1 through 3 are kind of the albums that make up Rebirth Story 1. Basically, they have all these different Rebirth stories, and those are the culmination. They're like best of albums for that respective era. So albums 1 through 3, favorite one's probably Fairy Queen. They had started out being a lot more like Hatsune Tsumiko's, and usually had a lot less energy than the later stuff, and a lot more like cozy listening, a lot more jazz influence. Whereas when you get into Rebirth Story 2, that era, they really start experimenting, and a lot of it I didn't really care for. I kind of have lower towards the list. But as they kind of like develop that sound, there's a lot of really good stuff. And overall, Rebirth Story 2 on its own is an album I listen to very frequently, and listen to especially like on long road trips and stuff. Moving on to the Rebirth Story 2 era, that's kind of when you get to like the middle of their discography, and that's when they really start ramping up, right? That's when they really start getting not only like refining what they were doing before, but also going in this new direction of having these really high energy, high paced songs, like almost even a few hard rock songs, you know, really amping up the energy. And my favorite album, probably, that is not a Rebirth Story album, is probably World Trick in that era, because it's so good. And they still keep the cozy listening of like the earlier eras, but also add in, you know, that high energy stuff that really gets you pumped. Moving on to like the fourth era, that's when they really start refining that, and that is kind of their peak of like their mastering and production and stuff. That's when they really start you know, getting that completely sorted out, and it just sounds so good. And then finally closing out with 5, again, that is their latest. And at first I wasn't as big onto it, but after listening to it more, I would say Rebirth Story 5 is like my favorite era. Again, that is the end of an era. Again, it's each one sounds distinct. It's kind of hard to put into words how much different Felt's discography. And the reason why I'm going into them is, again, they're my favorite, and I think I've met a lot of people who are also really into them and also say they're their favorite. And it's I've listened to everything in a lot. But finishing off with their final album, Start. And that one's really cool. I don't really necessarily like any of the songs on it that much, but they do one of the coolest things, where the first song on that album is just like an instrumental track with just some like simple synths on it. But it has Vivian, one of the main vocalists, just saying the name in like plain English of all of their titles. And then the song ends, and then at the end of the next song, she ends it with start, like start. And it's like, oh, I love it. I cry every time. But yeah, really, really good. Highly recommend. A lot of really, really good stuff. My favorite song is Day and Night, but they also have Sky is the Limit is not on any of these albums because it's in they did a lot of collaboration stuff, and that one's also really good and a little bit harder to find. So I highly recommend checking that out. Moving on, we're gonna do one that's a lot more obscure and a little bit dated, but I found out about them in researching for this panel. It's really cool. That's Echo Project. They did, again, it's less, they have like some funky stuff, some post-rock stuff. You know, just kind of have this like really interesting, cozy vibe to it. But the interesting thing I found about them is they have Gao as a vocalist, and she is the person who did the Fata Morgana soundtrack. I don't know if anyone read that, but I was a big fan. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And she basically does soundtracks for a bunch of different visual novels. And that's kind of the interesting thing is, you know, someone starts their career as a Touhou person and then goes and expands into doing like singing as a professional career. Kind of to wrap up all of the funk stuff, again, as I talked before, Tama Onsen, I'm not really that much of a rap person, but I actually quite like them, especially 66 Ondo, the one we played before. I really like the energy to that, and I think they do a really good job of it. It's very dorky, like if you actually look at the lyrics, what they're singing is very dorky, but it's also endearing. I really like the energy going on. They're really good. And you know, you also have a lot of instrumental jazz, which we just kind of didn't have that much time to really go that into.
Alright, so that was the funk section. Now let's get into rock circles, high energy octane stuff. Alright, so to start with, we'll have a demo here. Now, one of these songs is not quite like the others. It is up to you to figure out which one it is. So let's play it. So starting off, we have Shakira. Oh, it is doing a funny business. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're a little bit short on time.
Fortunately, I made
Yeah.
Alright, so first thing we have Shikyono, what is probably the quintessential Touhou rock band out there. So if you've seen any of their anime openings, that's probably where you'll know the most from. We have your one of the animes of all time, High School of the Dead. It's certainly up there, yeah. They also did JoJo, so that's sort of on the side. So in terms of recommendations, Magic Star Rocket. This is the first all-vocal song and their first all-vocal album. It marked a remarkable transformation in their development, actually, so that's why it's on there. Now, as for the second song, Black Market Stray Cats, simple reason why. So I was falling asleep while driving up, and this song woke me up and kept me awake while I was driving the rest of the way home. So it's paying homage to that. That's what it's on there. Next, we have Sea Clays. So this circle is very old. So when you have a circle that's 2004 to present, you have a lot of people that sort of come and go, various guest people that come and go and whatnot. Now, what that means is it sounds pretty different over the years. So you have like a lot of rock songs, which makes sense because it's a rock circle. And then you have country music. Curious. I wonder what they meant by that. So a lot of their listening experience is kind of like this, where they go from like one song type to the other, thinking, what in the world did they mean by any of that?
Yeah, it's very, very diverse.
Oh yeah. All right, next we have Pizia Cell, probably my second favorite circle actually. So for this one, I like it because of their genre selection. So they take combinations of metal/hard rock, electronic stuff, and certain orchestral elements, and they take highlights of them and blend them all together. You get something that's sort of really chaotic, really passionate, and it's something unique that you don't get with any other circle, and I really love it for that reason. So we have here Be Free the Power from Masquerade Circus. They basically took the Persona 5 album, style and turned it into a Touhou album, which sounds like a weird idea, but it was fantastically executed. So now, yes, the circle is no longer making Touhou stuff. What happened was that Pizzia's mother got cancer, so they decided to move to original stuff to, get a more reliable source of income. So it is what it is. So moving on to my actual favorite circle, none other than Buta Otome. So they have a fantastic cast here. They do lots of work, but Ranko is really the pearl of the oyster or whatnot. She's been around the block more than once, and her voice is beautiful. But this is really where her stomping grounds are. Where she does the stomping. So in terms of album recommendations, we have Budapest 4, your best bang for buck. This is a compilation album. It's a collection of a circle's really good songs, all in a tiny package. Next is Keyboard Cat 17. This was part of Paprika's side series of piano stuff back when she was still a part of the group. It's a nice side dish to Budatoma's more high energy stuff. Now, where they excel in my opinion, is Budatoma's ability to take these two pretty different elements of their work and combine them together. And this album here, Girl in Purgatory Falling For, is a great example of that. Lastly, we have Cosmo Flowers. So this is actually not a song from Buda Otome. It's actually track 5 from Shibayan's Magical Catastrophe, and this is, in our mutual shared opinion, Ranko's best non-Buda Otome song. This here, the really dark and gritty synthesizers that Shibayan has really blends well with the darker timbre that Ranko provides here.
Yeah, and that was an example of one of the things that inspired this panel is there's this vocalist, I think she's from something else, and then I kind of dug into the rabbit hole, and we all saw oh my god, all these people are collaborating together, this is actually really cool, and then we saw the German scene, oh, what's happening here? And so we just dove head first into this. There's so much research we can't even get to. Again, we're starting to get a little bit low on time.
Yeah, that's right. All right, next we have Stack, or Akatsuki Record, probably the circle that everyone knows about. To say it's wacky is an understatement, with PVs that are over the top, flashy stuff, with lyrics that make no sense and whatnot. For those that love this circle, none of that matters, because half of the reason why we love the circle is just because of the craziness that it provides. So, we have Stack here, half the intensity, craziness, the whole 9 meters, is all thanks to her. Then we have Agrock here, who is interesting because he was actually a founding member, but he left. Why would you leave a really big circle? But what we think happened was that they founded the circle together as a regular rock band, but then they disagreed because Stack wanted to do crazy hype stuff, and Agrock wanted to, just keep doing the same stuff. So by August 2018, they had a split. So, Classic Records did more crazy stuff. Here we have 2 PVs from certain songs, Necromantic and Yum Yum Yummy. Just by the PVs alone, you can really tell what the direction that Stack went to. Meanwhile, we have Akron and chose another vocalist. They actually went out and created Eno Rise. So it's much more of a run-of-the-mill rock circle, nothing too fancy, which is, their shtick nowadays. We have here KO vocalist who shared with the other circle, Compeki Studio. It's a new circle that we want to feature. In terms of instrumentation, it's like rock with an electronic influence, which I thought was pretty cool. Lastly, we have Touhou GM. So this one's this is much more breath of fresh air. So with a lot of other rock circles, you have like a pulse that you beat, like you vibe along to. Whereas this one, you're sitting back, you're taking it all in. It's much more of a vibe than it is a pulse that you're beating along to. So we have here ZUN and SY. They work together under Sally, a post-rock circle, really good in its own right. Pooter's gonna talk about it in much more detail later.
Yeah.
And then in terms of recommendations, Conqueror Zero is much more in line to their older stuff. So you have things like blending with guitars, you're enmeshed in the music. And then with Monster, they're much more selective in where they listen to music. It's a bit upbeat and it's really good in its own right. To conclude, we have a few recommendations. I will highlight Asatama Keishoku. We saw this circle and found that there is an uptick of Alice themed songs and albums. And every monitor should, because we love Alice here.
We do love Alice.
On this section. Next is the metal scene.
Oh yeah. So metal is interesting. It used to be something I was a lot more into. I haven't been as into it as much. But like there's actually a lot of Touhou metal and a lot of really good stuff. Are you able to get the thing working now, or is it still? There we go. So we're on. So hard. So good.
Alright, to start with, we have here two circles, Iron Attack and Under Corporation. So for this circle, you will notice they are very well dressed, they have the drip, and it's not just that actually. So if you go on the website, they have a bunch of concerts that they go to, all dressed like this. They're probably the most worldwide circle. You have like Spain, Australia, Switzerland, and even Taiwan for that matter. Next week, Under Corporation. If you know the song Everything Will Freeze, you might be a fan of a certain game called Osu, where this song was one of the top ranked songs of all time with over 54 million plays and a success rate of just under 10%. Next we have Foray Clips.
Okay, so Foreground Eclipse, again, Marami Pop's here, and again, she started out doing more Dempa stuff, but then ended up doing this metalcore stuff, which is a really interesting change. And I really like Foreground Eclipse because they do a really good job of having these screamo vocals by like a male backing vocalist, contrasted with, you know, more of a cutesy Marami Pop vocals. One of the people we won't be able to get into today is Yupi, and he's interesting because he also did a similar thing in a thing, he started out in Touhou, but he did a similar thing in a band you might have heard of called Baby Metal. That is like 75% of the songs are done by Touhou people. So anyway, so she started doing, you had Marami Pop working a lot in Foreground Eclipse. It was there's two distinct eras of the old era and the new era. I prefer the old era a bit, but a lot of people prefer, you know, some of the new stuff. Then kind of after Foreground Eclipse faded away, we got Shinige with Satellite, which eventually became Kachi Kachi Yama. And what I really like about that is Kachi Kachi Yama has like this super cutesy album art, but this is screamo metal, right? Like look at your metalcore, bro. Here you go. Here's your album art. And going more into metalcore is Takamachi Walk, and they are like legitimately really, really good. Like outside of Touhou, I listen to a lot of Beartooth, and I actually consider them better. They're really good if you like the genre of like metalcore and stuff. I got to talk to Noah on. He's really cool. He's down in Georgia. I tried to have him come out to a few cons with us, but he hasn't been able to yet, unfortunately. And you know, again, they work with a lot of different vocalists internationally. I think with some people from America, some people in Sweden. And they've had 4 albums so far. Their first album, again, was stuff they did in collaboration with other groups. And then after that, you know, they started doing a lot more original stuff. And they had most recently Remnants, which I forget. Do you remember when that was released? Was that 2022 or 3? 22, yeah. So they're still active from what I can tell. Really, really good, really cool people. Highly recommend checking them out if you have any interest in metal.
See, of these, I'll highlight 2 of them. Silently Shooting Traitors. They have, despite having only 1 or 2 albums, they have a really good original albums that I really like, and obviously draw the emotional because Mario Pop, he's easier once again.
So now finally getting into like my favorite thing, and this kind of inspired like a new direction for the panel, right? And that is what I'll call vibe music. Again, post rock, punk, lo-fi, shoegaze, the stuff you really vibe to. You can get that going. You'll understand what I mean. Yeah. Turn out minimal electric design. Now we're doing Cairo. Kurage sequel. This is the distant journey. But yeah, anyway, to kind of start off this, we're gonna go into some lo-fi hip hop. And Dog and Cat like electronic song compilation is one of the best, if not the best, Touhou album. It is done by I forget their name. What is it? Macaroon. And so they collaborated with Pelosi to make this. And it's really interesting that they have this during 2020, during COVID. They released this whole album for free on YouTube for free listening on their YouTube channel. And that with the hashtag Stay Home, and that was really cool. And it's a very like the lyrics in it are very emotional. It's a really like really passionately made album with some really good songs. I'd highly recommend. Out of anything, go and take a look at this. It's so cool. Moving on, we're going to go into some of the post rock. And I think one of the biggest ones is Tengu no Mai in terms of longest running, most releases. Though probably the most popular is Sally. Again, we talked about Touhou Jihen. Sally does a lot more with like collab vocals, like they have Bronco and stuff on it. So the most like intermixed. And again, they eventually became Touhou Jihen.
Oh, I'll book the mention. Mariah Pop also.
Yeah,
Big appearances as well.
Mariah Pop's in there. And then you have Cairo, who is, I don't know if they're necessarily obscure, but I'd highly recommend checking them out. They're not, I don't see them as much, and Cairo is so good, especially that album. Especially that album is, again, like, just so good, highly recommend. Moving on to Minimum Electric Design. And this is another case of they sound exactly like their name sounds like. Like, when you think, oh, I want to listen to some Minimum Electric Design, you kind of, and then you listen to it, you're like, okay, yeah, this is that. And I really like one of their song titles, Into My Depressed Brain. So I love like the little like the emo poetry going on there. And again, some of their earlier stuff from the trail, that is much more instrumental and much more, like emo-y, like, emotional, instrumental. Whereas as you kind of go forward, they start getting into some funk, and then now they're kind of doing much more like pop rock stuff. They also collaborated a bit with Afterglow. They kind of have this like similar thing going on. They worked with Symmetry on that album together, and it's a really good album. Afterglow, the earlier discography is a little bit weaker, we both think, but what is that? Farewell, Old Out, Adam. really, really good. Highly recommend them. Highly recommend that album. Moving on to kind of more like, I think it'd be considered alt rock type music. The kind of music you expect from FLCL, right? 9B Fox is probably the bigger one, though I've had a lot less interaction with them. They're a lot more punk leaning than Karage Seek Room. And I just find it really interesting that, like, 9B Fox, okay, I see the Fox part, but they also have a bit of a fascination with having, like, soft Yuri on all of the covers, or having, you know, Ron on the covers. So that was interesting. Then moving on to Karage Seek Room, it's just a guy. He does the vocals and the instrumentation, which is pretty cool. And I really want to recommend him, because again, he does everything himself. And this is again one of those things where a lot of passion's put into this. There's some really, really good stuff, and almost no one knows about these guys. So I'd highly recommend, like, hidden gem right here. Highly recommend going and checking them out if you're at all interested in, like, you know, the FLCL vibes. Then kind of moving on to more of the punky stuff. All of this is super obscure and probably really hard to find, but I've included it here for the sake of completion. You've got Tenchiki, Girl Sick, and my favorite name of all of these, TV Shop on the Second Floor. It's just a really, really cool name. We actually, I got him an album for Christmas from them, and it's a really cool album. It has really cool album art. And again, they, interestingly enough, the TV Shop on the Second Floor actually collaborated with Karage Seek Room. So even in these, a lot of these people in this kind of like made-up genre of vibe music, they all collaborate with each other, which is really cool. And then finally we get to shoegaze, which I'm a big fan of. If you haven't heard the genre before, it is basically the type of rock music where the guitars sound like vacuum cleaners. Very droney. Also very droney vocals, usually lower in the mix. And here we kind of have a comparison here. So you have Gunjo Ribbon, they are the most rock and the least shoegaze. They have a lot less droniness, and they also have, what is that, male vocals. Then you get to 8686M, and the interesting thing about them is, because I was working on them for the crossfade earlier, I actually got to look at the waveforms, and you can physically see the difference in how the music is like composed, how the mastering is done. This is a lot more peaky, whereas Last Little While is like just the whole time, just fully there, just really like full maxed out, really drony. So all of these kind of are in like arranged in order of like droniness. 8686M has male and female vocals, whereas Last Little While just has female vocals. Last Little While is very, I'd say probably the most popular here, despite only having one album, but it's such an iconic album for the shoegaze scene that like all of the people who are into that genre kind of like know it and love it, you know? And then kind of round out, we're gonna go with the international scene, which is also very popular. There's a lot of Touhou music in the international scene for this genre. A lot of lo-fi, a lot of post-rock. Then you've got Higan Daybreak doing whatever they do. I'm good friends with the person who runs that, and he's pretty cool. He's really, really into shoegaze, keeps recommending me all the shoegaze, but he doesn't actually make shoegaze music. He wanted to originally, that's what he made the Circle for, but he never actually ended up doing any, which is a shame, because I really liked the stuff he showed me where he was kind of working through it, trying to work with that. And another one that's very obscure, this Plantagena. I found out about them like very, very recently, and they do like more like city pop type stuff. And I'd highly recommend checking them out. They're really good. They're really good at doing what they're doing, and they're on Bandcamp. They've got, I forget if it's 2 or 3 albums out right now. But they're really good. Highly recommend checking them out if you're interested in that kind of stuff. And then finally, to kind of close out ASCII, we've got compiled a list of our different favorites from all of the different, from all of the circles, all of our favorite albums, all of our favorite songs and stuff. So ASCII, you can go ahead and start out.
Sure. Alright, so based off the list, I'm much more of a rockhead type of guy. So we have like circles like Budao Tome, PCSL, Touhou Jian, all right on the list. For Budao Tome in particular, it's been with me for a very long time. I actually found out around Touhou right around the time I found out about Budao Tome. So just for the longevity alone, it's up there. PCSL, it just speaks to my heart. So just something about it just clicks differently. Now for some other circles like Touhou, Gina, and Sally, I actually didn't find them until fairly recently. Notably with Sally, I was actually doing research for the panel, and when I happened upon Postmark, I found Sally. I was like, hey, this is pretty good. I'll give it a listen. And then later on, I grew more and more love with it, and to the point now it's actually ranks high up there. Now in terms of my album recommendations that I like, we have here Magic Catastrophe, probably mutual agreement, probably one of the best albums ever made for Touhou. Reaper Story 4 from Felt, absolute peak. Every single song, one after the other, just hits. Hit after hit after hit. Fantastic. And then we have here Ubiquitous Circus. Absolutely fantastic. It's my perfect synergy.
Yeah. All right. So for me, I'm a big Felt person. Really into them. Again, I'm a bit rusty in terms of going through their whole discography, but trust me, on a good day, I can kill that. Also, really big into Shibayan. Again, mostly for his new disco stuff, but that is like my most recent too. I do a lot of running, and that is my running music, right? ZUN also really high up there, similar, really like it for exercising. Kurage Sequin's amazing driving music. I love listening to it on long drives. And then Foreground Eclipse and Takamachi Walk kind of go back to like my metal days. I used to be really into that. Now I'm a little bit more into like the more mellower stuff. But every now and then I really like dipping my toes into it, and I think they're really good at what they're doing, and I really like what they're working for there. Favorite album, probably maybe of all time is Rebirth Story 5. Just so good. Good song after good song after good song. You also get 2 CDs, so it's a double album. Just the absolute peak of Felt, like favorite music. But very close is the Cat and Dog Song compilation album. Again, that album is so good. So much energy, so much emotion put into it, so much thought put into the lyrics. It's a very cool, very great experience. We do a lot of road trips to a bunch of different cons. And this is, when we're driving through Nashville at 2 a.m., this comes on. Hopefully it's raining too. And you just go past, all of like the neon lights and stuff, and you're driving through and you're like, man, this is peak. And then for actual songs itself, favorite Touhou song is Day and Night, though closely followed by Roundabout. Again, I was talking about that a bit in the Zytokind thing. And Plain Asia with Elstrom Area, like really good running music, really gets me hyped up, really gets me going for running and biking. So, yeah. So just to go through a few of the interviews we did, again in 2022, talked to Melky Shan, JD, and Noah. And then just last year, we talked to Jeep from Crest. We didn't get to talk about Crest that much. They're not as big in the international scene doesn't really know about them that much, and Japan decently knows about them, but they're really big in China. But they have Taiwanese vocalists and a Japanese producer, and they're pretty cool. Got to talk with them a lot. Wish we had more time to talk about them, but we're almost up. Again, also talked to pretty much all of the YouTubers we mentioned, and they were all really cool to talk to. And then also just want to give some shout outs to a bunch of people. There's the Quinster. He was supposed to be here, but he had to leave early, unfortunately. Really wish he was up here. He has a lot of interesting takes on stuff. It would have really helped, round it out a bunch of this. We also have, he wasn't able to record this time, but for previous panels, we had our friend Cthulhu recording. He also came up with the name when we were really confused. Oh, what do we call the panel? What's our catchy title? And then he just said, "Damn, ZUN, where'd you find this?" And it's done. And all of the cons are okay with us calling it that, so we'll go with that. But also, pretty much a lot of friends went and bounced off ideas for, got a lot of like new people's takes on, what do you think of this music? People who've been in the scene for a while got their takes. And just want to really quickly shout out NCC. He helped me with the translation for Crest because he's Chinese and he could help with some of the Mandarin. Skeletor in the crowd, he's helped a lot with kind of testing out not only some of the panel slides, but also a lot of the music, giving opinions on that. Unfortunately, MILF Hunter 48 was not able to come in today, but he's always been a big help. We've got Dad Pixel. He also kind of helped talk us through a lot of the stuff he was interested in, and he was the one who introduced me to a lot of the stuff in the post-rock section. You also have Andy there. Also helped out quite a bit for the bouncing off like recommendations and stuff. I forget, it's been a bit since we made the slides, but you helped with the slides. So, and then we had Pick and Angels. They both also helped out a bit with the slides. Also, we weren't able to come out to this one, but wait. Well, he's somewhere else. He's somewhere else. So.
Can we play the rock demo?
Oh, do we have time for it? Do we have time for it?
We
Okay.
have
So we're gonna go back to the rock demo because we have a little bit of extra time. Again, I think you can now tell why we had an hour and a half time slot. There's a lot to cover, and we had to cut most of this. Well, if it's not working, it's not working.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll just call it. But yeah, thank you all for coming out. It was a lot of fun. I'm sorry, this kind of had to happen at the end, but I really appreciate everyone who stayed for this whole thing. Really appreciate you all, and hope you had a great con.
There we go. You did it. All right, this is the winner of the which song stood out. I wonder why. Curious. That's what stood out to me. This one is towards it.
So he had a different channel name, but he got changed his name or got a different channel because people kept stealing his stuff. It was like R, and now it's like A4S9.
Alright.
And he does a lot of Pokemon Gen 8 style, Gen 9 style remixes.
Alright, let's do it.
So I'm trying to feel like there's a decent
You
bit
want
of
to short or long one?
stuff like that.
Yeah, short or long?
Probably some research
Long?
that they can
Alright.
add.
I don't know the second verse.
Because, well, going into
Alright,
like,
what is this? Oh, the karaoke thing? Okay.
yeah, there's a lot.
Alright.
There's a lot of 8-bit,
Alright, off home. Here you go.
There you go.
There you go. Do you need time or? Alright. Good luck.
うから人の心
進まないでじりじり
It's broke.